Chapter 1. The Meaning of Islam. Every religion of the world has been named either after its founder or after the community or nation in which it was born. For instance, Christianity takes its name from its prophet Jesus Christ, Buddhism from its founder, Gautama Buddha, Zoroastrianism from its founder, Zoroaster, and Judaism, the religion of the Jews, from the name of the tribe Judah, of the country of Judea, where it originated. The same is true of all other religions except Islam, which enjoys the unique distinction of having no such association with any particular person or people or country, nor is it the product of any human mind. It is a universal religion, and its objective is to create and cultivate in man the quality and attitude of Islam. Islam, in fact, is an attributive title. Anyone who possesses this attribute, whatever race, community, country, or group he belongs to, is a Muslim. According to the Quran, the holy book of the Muslims, among every people and in all ages there have been good and righteous people who possess this attribute, and all of them were and are Muslims. Islam. What does it mean? Islam is an Arabic word and connotes submission, surrender, and obedience. As a religion, Islam stands for complete submission and obedience to Allah. Everyone can see that we live in an orderly universe where everything is assigned a place in a grand scheme. The moon, the stars, and all the heavenly bodies are knit together in a magnificent system. They follow unalterable laws and make not even the slightest deviation from their ordained courses. Similarly, everything in the world, from the minute whirling electron to the mighty nebulae, invariably follows its own laws. Matter, energy, and life all obey their laws and grow and change and live and die in accordance with those laws. Even in the human world, the laws of nature are paramount. Man's birth, growth, and life are all regulated by a set of biological laws. He derives sustenance from nature in accordance with an unalterable law. All the organs of his body, from the smallest tissues to the human heart and the brain, are governed by the laws prescribed for them. In short, ours is a law-governed universe, and everything in it is following the course that has been ordained for it. This powerful, all-pervasive law, which governs all that comprises the universe, from the tiniest specks of dust to the magnificent galaxies of the heavens, is the law of God, the Creator, the ruler of the universe. As a whole of creation obeys the law of God, the whole universe, therefore, literally follows the religion of Islam, for Islam signifies nothing but obedience and submission to Allah, the Lord of the universe. The sun, the moon, the earth, and all other heavenly bodies are thus Muslim. So are the air, water, heat, stones, trees, and animals. Everything in the universe is Muslim, for it obeys God by submission to his laws. Even a man who refuses to believe in God or offers his worship to someone other than Allah has necessarily to be a Muslim as far as his existence is concerned. for his entire life, from the embryonic stage to the body's dissolution into dust after death. Every tissue of his muscles and every limb of his body follows the course prescribed by God's law. His very tongue, which, on account of his ignorance, advocates the denial of God or professes multiple deities, is in its very nature Muslim. His head, which he wantonly bows to others besides Allah, is born Muslim. His heart, which, through his lack of true knowledge, cherishes love and reverence for others, is Muslim by intuition. These are all obedient to the divine law, and their functions and movements are governed by the injunctions of that law alone. Let us now examine the situation from a different angle. Man is so constituted that there are two distinct spheres of his activity. One is the sphere in which he finds himself totally regulated by the divine law. Like other creatures, he is completely caught in the grip of the physical laws of nature and is bound to follow them. But there is another sphere of his activity. He has been endowed with reason and intellect. He has the power to think and form judgments, to choose and reject, to approve and spurn. He is free to adopt whatever course of life he chooses. He can embrace any faith and live by any ideology he likes. He may prepare his own code of conduct or accept one formulated by others. Unlike other creatures, he has been given freedom of thought, choice, and action. In short, man has been bestowed with free will. Both these aspects coexist side by side in man's life. In the first, like all other creatures, he is born Muslim, invariably obeying the injunctions of God, and is bound to remain one. As far as the second aspect is concerned, he is free to become or not to become a Muslim. It is the way a person exercises this freedom which divides mankind into two groups, believers and non-believers. An individual who chooses to acknowledge his Creator accepts him as his real master, honestly and scrupulously submits to his laws and injunctions, and follows the code. He has achieved completeness in his Islam by consciously deciding to obey God in the domain in which he was endowed with freedom of choice. He is a perfect Muslim. His submission of his entire self to the will of Allah in Islam, and nothing but Islam. He has now consciously submitted to him, whom he had already been unconsciously obeying. He has now willingly offered obedience to the Master, whom he had already owed obedience to involuntarily. His knowledge is now real, for he has acknowledged the being who endowed him with the power to learn and to know. Now his reason and judgment are set on an even keel, for he has rightly decided to obey the being who bestowed upon him the faculty of thinking and judging. His tongue is also truthful, for it expresses its belief in the Lord who gave it the faculty of speech. Now, the whole of his existence is an embodiment of truth, for, in all spheres of life, he voluntarily as well as involuntarily obeys the laws of one God, the Lord of the universe. Now, he is at peace with the whole universe, for he worships him who the whole universe worships. Such a man is God's vice-regent on earth. The whole world is for him, and he is for God. the nature of disbelief. In contrast to the man described before, there is the man who, although born a Muslim and unconsciously remaining one throughout his life, does not exercise his faculties of reason, intellect and intuition to recognize his Lord and Creator, and misuses his freedom of choice by choosing to deny him. Such a man becomes an unbeliever. In the language of Islam, a kafir. Kufr literally means to cover or to conceal. The man who denies God is called kafir, concealer, because he conceals his disbelief, what is inherent in his nature and embalmed in his own soul, for his nature is instinctively imbued with Islam. His whole body functions in obedience to that instinct. Each and every particle of existence, living or lifeless, functions in accordance with Islam and is fulfilling the duty that it's been assigned to it. But the vision of this man has been blurred, his intelligence has been befogged, and he is unable to see the obvious. His own nature has become concealed from his eyes, and he thinks and acts in utter disregard of it. Reality becomes estranged from him, and he gropes in the dark. Such is the nature of Kufr. Kufr is a form of ignorance, or rather, it is ignorance. What ignorance can be greater than to be ignorant of God the Creator, the Lord of the universe? A man observes the vast panorama of nature, the superb mechanism that is ceaselessly working, the grand design that is manifest in every aspect of creation. He observes this vast machine, but he does not know anything of its maker and director. He knows what a wonderful organism his body is, but is unable to comprehend the force that brought it into existence, the engineer who designed and produced it, the Creator who made the unique living being out of lifeless stuff, carbon, calcium, sodium, and the like. He witnesses a superb plan in the universe, but fails to see the planner behind it. He sees great beauty and harmony in its working, but not the Creator. He observes a wonderful design in nature, but not the designer. How can a man who has so blinded himself to reality approach true knowledge? How can one who has made the wrong beginning reach the right destination? He will fail to find the key to reality. The right path will remain concealed for him, and whatever his endeavours in science and arts, he will never be able to attain truth and wisdom. He will be groping in the darkness of ignorance. Not only that, Kufr is a tyranny, the worst of all tyrannies. And what is tyranny? It is an unjust use of force or power. It is when you compel a thing to act unjustly or against its true nature, its real and will, and its inherent attitude. We have seen that all that is in the universe is obedient to God, the Creator, to obey, to live in accordance with His will and His law, or to put it more precisely, to be a Muslim. And this is ingrained in the nature of things. God has given man power over these things, but it is incumbent that they should be used for the fulfillment of His will, and not otherwise. Anyone who disobeys God and resorts to Kufr perpetuates the greatest injustice, for he uses his powers of body and mind to rebel against the course of nature and becomes an instrument in the drama of disobedience. He bows his head before deities other than God and cherishes in his heart the love, reverence, and fear of other powers in utter disregard of the instinctive urge of these organs. He uses his own powers and all those things over which he has authority against the explicit will of God, and thus establishes a reign of tyranny. Can there be any greater injustice, tyranny, and cruelty than that exhibited by this man who exploits and misuses everything under the sun and unscrupulously forces them to a course which affronts nature and justice? Kufr is not mere tyranny, it is rebellion, ingratitude, and infidelity. After all, what is the reality of man? Where do his power and authority come from? Is he himself the creator of his mind, his heart, his soul, and other organs of his body? Or have they been created by God? Has he himself created the universe and all that is in it? Or has it been created by God? Who has harnessed all the powers and energy for the service of man? Man or God? If everything has been created by God and God alone, then to whom do they belong? Who is their rightful sovereign? It is God and no one else. And if God is the creator, the master and the sovereign, then who would be a greater rebel than the man who uses God's creation against his injunctions? And who makes his mind think against God, harbours in his heart thoughts against him, and uses his various faculties against the sovereign's will? If a servant betrays his master, you denounce him as faithless. If an officer becomes disloyal to the state, you brand him as a traitor and a renegade. If a person cheats his benefactor, you have no hesitation in condemning him as ungrateful. But such acts cannot begin to compare to the one which the believer commits by his kufr. All that a man has and all that he uses for the benefit of others is a gift of God. The greatest obligation that a man owes on this earth is to his parents. But who has implanted the love of children in the parent's heart? Who endowed the mother with the will and power to nurture, nourish, and feed her children? Who inspired the parents with the passion to spend everything in their possession for the well-being of their children? A little reflection would reveal that God is the greatest benefactor of man. He is his creator, Lord, nourisher, sustainer, as well as king and sovereign. So what can be greater betrayal, ingratitude, rebellion, and treason than kufr, through which a man denies and disobeys his real Lord and sovereign? Do not think that by committing kufr, man does or can do the least harm to Almighty God. Insignificant speck on the face of a tiny ball in this limitless universe that man is. What harm can he do to the Lord of the universe, whose dominions are so infinitely vast that we have not yet been able to explore their boundaries even with the help of the most powerful telescope? Whose power is so great that myriads of heavenly bodies like the earth, the moon, the sun, and the stars are, at his bidding, whirling like tiny balls? whose wealth is so boundless that he is the sole master of the universe, and who provides for all and needs none to provide for him. Man's revolt against him can do him no harm. On the other hand, by his disobedience, man treads the path of ruin and disgrace. The inevitable consequence of this revolt and denial of reality is a failure in the ultimate ideals of life. Such a rebel will never find the thread of real knowledge and vision, for knowledge that fails to reveal its own creator can reveal no truth. Such a man's intellect and reason always run astray, for reason which errs about its own creator cannot illumine the paths of life. Such a man will meet with failures in all affairs of his life: his morality, his civic and social life, his struggle for livelihood, and his family life. In short, his entire existence will be unsatisfactory. He will spread confusion and disorder. He will, without the least compunction, shed blood, violate other men's rights, and generally act destructively. His perverted thoughts and ambitions, his blurred vision and distorted scale of values, and his evil activities will make life bitter for him and for all around him. Such a man destroys the calm and pose of life on earth, and in the life hereafter he will be held guilty for the crimes he committed against his nature. Every organ of his body, his brain, eyes, nose, hands and feet, will complain against the injustice and cruelty he had subjected them to. Every tissue of his being will denounce him before God, who, as the fountain of justice, will punish him as he deserves. This is the inglorious consequence of Kufr. It leads to the blind alleys of utter failure, both here and hereafter. The blessings of Islam. These are the evils and disadvantages of Kufr. Let us now look at some of the blessings of Islam. You find in the world around you, and in the small kingdom of your own self, innumerable manifestations of God's divine power. This grand universe, which ceaselessly works with matchless order and in accordance with unalterable laws, is in itself a witness to the fact that its designer, creator, and governor is an omnipotent, all-powerful being with infinite power, knowledge, and resources, a being of perfect wisdom, whom nothing in the universe dares disobey. It is in the very nature of man, as it is with every other thing in this universe, to obey him. Besides endowing man with the capability to acquire knowledge, the faculty to think and reflect, and the ability to distinguish right from wrong, God has granted him a certain amount of freedom and will and action. In this freedom lies the man's real trial. His knowledge, his wisdom, his power of discrimination, and his freedom of will and action are all being tried and tested. Man has not been obliged to adopt any particular course, for by compulsion the very object of the trial would have been defeated. If, in an examination, you are compelled to write a certain answer to a question, the examination would be of no use. Your merit can be properly judged only if you are allowed to answer questions freely, according to your own knowledge and understanding. If your answer is correct, you will succeed. If it's wrong, you will fail, and failure will bar the way to future progress. The situation which man faces is similar. God has given him freedom of will and action so that he may choose whatever attitude in life he likes and considers as proper for himself, Islam or Kufr. By the correct use of his knowledge and intellect, a man recognizes his Creator, reposes belief in him, and, in spite of being under no compulsion to do so, chooses the path of obedience to him. He understands both his own nature and the laws and realities of nature itself, despite the power and freedom to adopt any course. He adopts the way of obedience and loyalty to God the Creator. He is successful in his trial because he has used his intellect and all other faculties properly. He uses his eyes to see the reality, his ears to listen to the truth, and his mind to form right opinions. He puts all his heart and soul into following the right way. He has chosen. He chooses truth, sees the reality, and willingly and joyfully submits to his Lord and Master. He is intelligent, truthful, and dutiful, for he has chosen light over darkness. Thus, he has proved by his conduct that he is not only a seeker after truth, but is the knower and worshipper as well. Such a man is on the right path and is destined to succeed in this world and in the world to come. Such a man will always choose the right path in every field of knowledge and action. The man who knows God with all his attributes knows the beginning as well as the ultimate end of reality. He can never be led astray, for his first step is on the right path, and he is sure of the direction and destination of his journey in life. He will reflect on the secrets of the universe and will try to fathom the mysteries of nature. But he will not lose his way in mazes of doubt and skepticism. His path being illuminated with divine vision, his every step will be in the right direction. In science, he will endeavour to learn the laws of nature and uncover the hidden treasures of the earth for the betterment of humanity. He will try his level best to explore all avenues of knowledge and power, and to harness all that exists on earth and in the heavens in the interests of mankind. At every stage of his inquiry, his God consciousness will save him from making evil and destructive uses of science and the scientific method. He will never think of himself as the master of all these objects, boasting to be the conqueror of nature, arrogating himself to be godly and sovereign powers, and nourishing the ambition to subverting the world, subduing the human race, and establishing his supremacy over all and sundry by fair means or foul. Such an attitude of revolt and defiance can never be entertained by a Muslim scientist. Only a kafir scientist can fall prey to such illusions, and by submitting to them, expose the entire human race to the danger of total destruction and annihilation. A Muslim scientist, on the other hand, will behave in an altogether different way. The deeper his insight into the world of science, the stronger will be his faith in God. His head will bow down before him in gratitude. His feelings will be that as his master has blessed him with greater power and knowledge, so he must exert himself for his own good and for the good of humanity. Instead of arrogance, there will be humility. Instead of power, drunkenness, there will be a strong realization of the need to serve humanity. His freedom will not be unbridled. He will be guided by the tenets of morality and divine revelation. Thus, science will, in his hands, instead of becoming an instrument of destruction, become an agency for human welfare and moral regeneration. And this is the way in which he will express his gratitude to his master for the gifts and blessings he has bestowed on man. Similarly, in history, economics, politics, law, and other branches of arts and science, a Muslim will nowhere lag behind a kafir in the fields of inquiry and struggle, but their angles of view and consequently their modus operandi will be widely different. A Muslim will study every branch of knowledge in its true perspective. He will strive to arrive at the right conclusions. In history, he will draw correct lessons from the past experiences of man and will uncover the true causes of the rise and fall of civilizations. He will try to benefit from all that was good and right in the past and will scrupulously avoid all that led to the decline and fall of nations. In politics, his sole objective will be to strive for the establishment of policies where peace, justice, fraternity, and goodness reign, where man is a brother of man and respects his humanity, where no exploitation or slavery is rampant, where the rights of the individual are upheld, and where the powers of the state are considered as a sacred trust from God and are used for the common welfare of all. In the field of law, the endeavour of a Muslim will be to make it the true embodiment of justice and the real protector of the rights of all, particularly of the weak. He will see that everybody gets his due share and no injustice or oppression is inflicted on anyone. He will respect the law, make others respect it, and will see that it is administered equitably. The life of a Muslim will always be filled with goodness, piety, righteousness, and truthfulness. He will live in the belief that God alone is the master of all, that whatever he and other men possess has been given by God, that the powers he wields are only a trust from God, that the freedom he has been endowed with is not to be used indiscriminately, and that it is in his own interest to use it in accordance with God's will. He will constantly keep in view that one day he will have to return to the Lord and submit an account of his entire life. The sense of accountability will always remain implanted in his mind, and he will never behave irresponsibly. Think of the moral excellence of the man who lives with this mental attitude. His will be a life of purity and piety and love and altruism. He will be a blessing unto mankind. His thinking will not be polluted with evil thoughts and perverted ambitions. He will abstain from seeing evil, hearing evil, and doing evil. He will guard his tongue and will never utter a word of a lie. He will earn his living through just and fair means and will prefer hunger to a food acquired unfairly through exploitation or injustice. He will never be a party to any form of oppression or violation of human life and honour. He will never yield to evil, whatever the cost of defiance. He will be an embodiment of goodness and nobility, and will defend right and truth even at the cost of his life. Such a man will be a power to be reckoned with. He is bound to succeed. He will be highly honored and respected. How can humiliation ever visit a person who is not prepared to bow his head before anyone except God the Almighty, the Sovereign of the universe? No one can be more powerful than he, for he fears none but God, and he seeks blessings from none but him. What power can make him deviate from the right path? What wealth can buy his faith? What force can shape his conscience? What power can compel him to behave as he does not want to? He will be the most wealthy. No one in the world can be richer or more independent than he, for he will live a life of austerity and contentment. He will be neither a sensualist, nor indulgent, nor greedy. He will be contented with whatever he earns fairly and honestly, and however much ill-gotten wealth is heaped before him, he will not even look at it. He will have peace, contentment of heart, and what can be greater wealth than this? He will be the most revered, popular and beloved. No one can be more lovable than he, for he loves a life of charity and benevolence. He will be just to everyone, discharge his duties honestly, and work for the good of others. People's hearts will be naturally drawn towards him. No one can be more trustworthy than he, for he will not betray his trust, nor will he stray from the righteousness. He will be true to his word and straightforward and honest in his dealings. He will be fair and just in all his affairs, for he is sure that God is ever present, ever vigilant. Words fail to describe the credit and goodwill which such a man commands. There cannot be anyone who would not trust him. Such is the life and character of a Muslim. If you understand the true character of a Muslim, you will be convinced that he cannot live in humiliation, abasement, or subjugation. He is bound to prevail, and no power on earth can overwhelm him. For Islam inoculates in him the qualities which cannot be driven out. And after living a respectable and honourable life on earth, he will return to his Creator, who will shower on him the choicest of his blessings, for he will have discharged his duty ably, fulfilled his mission successfully, and emerged from his trial triumphantly. He is successful in life in this world and in the hereafter, will live in eternal peace, joy and bliss. This is Islam, the natural religion of man, the religion which is not associated with any person, people, period or place. It is the way of nature, the religion of man, in every age, in every country, and among every people. All God-knowing and truth-loving men have believed and lived this very religion. They were all Muslims, irrespective of whether they called that way Islam. Whatever its name was, it signified Islam, and nothing but Islam.